food prices have been climbing in South Africa, and experts are warning that the pain is only going to get worse. An affordability index shows that the average food basket rose by nearly 100 rand compared to last month. It has increased by around 400 rand from this time a year ago in October. To discuss, we're joined by Dr. Julie Smith, researcher at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. Dr. Smith, thank you. Let's start with what is driving up food prices.
The food prices are being driven up by the increase in the electricity tariff, which was implemented in June and July. It was a 14.59% increase. And electricity runs through our food value chains, and it's now reflecting on our supermarket shelves. That's the first thing. The second thing is there is an element of seasonality. So, for example, potatoes, butternut, tomatoes are more expensive in October generally. And then the cost of transport also appears to be increasing the prices on supermarket shelves.
And then just short term, fuel is set to go up in November, so that's going to make things worse. And then December, why do we see food prices going up around Christmas?
Yeah, there's just general, the retail sector, like any good capitalist, increases the prices when there's more of a demand. People tend to have more money or more desperation to have at least some sort of a dignity around Christmas. Mothers will buy their kids clothes, and food is important to celebrate our humanity, and retailers tend to jump onto that. But there's also a big element that's going to drive our prices, which is the hike or the surge in the crude oil price, which runs through not only increasing our petrol and our diesel, but it also is an input in most of our agricultural production, most of our packaging, our plastics, our chemicals, our synthetics. They're all driven by the crude oil price, and it's now currently sitting at $83 a barrel, and it's likely to increase to almost $100 a barrel by the end of the year.
What about the local factors? So that's external to South Africa, but right now we're having load shedding. So you spoke about that food chain. Is there huge wastage right now? And then, of course, transport used to carry food goods, and we've seen those huge trucker blockades on major highways.
Yeah, so all of that is driving the increases. So if you have a blackout, if you have load reduction, if you have load shedding, then you have to have some sort of alternative battery backup. Like I'm talking to you now with a backup system in place, which cost me 5,000 Rand. It's a lot of money. It's money that I don't have. But for a business, you have to have massive backups for your electricity supply, and also you don't know when it's going to go off or not. So there are losses in that event. But it's just really expensive to have all sorts of backup the whole time, particularly for small businesses. And then there's a hell of a lot of congestion on the road because most of our cargo now is being transported on our roads. And obviously that means more road maintenance, and if it's not being done, then it means damage to vehicles. But we also are suffering the aftermath of the July unrest. So many of our cold storage facilities in Durban were damaged. And that means that we now have to find alternative sources of the cold storage, and many of them are in Joburg. But just generally, we're spending longer times on the roads. Our electricity backups are costing us more money, and generally getting food from one place to another place is much more expensive now than it was.
And of course, so all this compounding, so we know, I mean, there was already underlying poverty and unemployment. The average food basket, according to this index, is around 4,300 Rand for a household. What constitutes a household? That sounds out of reach for so many South African households. And I guess it puts that grant of 350 Rand into very sharp relief.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, our basket is for a household size of 7. The food poverty line is 624 Rand per person per month. So our food basket comes in just below the food poverty line for a family of 7. So it's not excessive in terms of in relation to the food poverty line. It's just that food is really, really expensive.
Yeah.
But it also shows you that the 350 really doesn't go very far. So basically with 350, you can buy 10 kgs of maize meal, 10 kgs of rice, 10 kgs of flour. That's it. The money's gone. I mean, if you think about it per day, you're getting less than a loaf of bread. So the government intervention in terms of really assisting people in one of the worst pandemics, the biggest economic crisis we've ever had, is 350. And that's really the only intervention that government has made. When we have a situation where the expanded unemployment rate for Black South Africans is sitting at 48.7%, with 10.7 million Black South Africans unemployed. So it also just, we're going into elections now, and we wonder really whether people are going to go and vote with their bellies, because the pain that mothers go through by not being able to feed their children properly and having to listen to their children cry, and yet government is not intervening. You wonder where we're heading in South Africa, because if kids don't eat properly, then what kind of economy are we expecting down the line?
Yeah. And I mean, this is one of the alarm bells about nutrition as well. So if you can't afford bread every day, obviously you're going to go for those cheap, sugary carbohydrates whenever you can get them. What do policy makers do when it's not only poverty that's the issue, but diabetes, blood pressure, a whole range of illnesses linked to people's diets?
Well, they're not making those connections. So when you don't have a lot of money, you have to spend it on the core staples. So as you said, the maize meal, the rice, the flour, the oil, the sugar, the salt. That's basically what people are eating, so that at least they fill their kids' bellies. But we need protein. Kids need protein to develop cognitively. We need fiber in our diets. We need vitamins and minerals. We need to be able to resist illnesses through the plate. And so none of that is on the plate anymore. It's all out of our trolleys. So we're going to create a massive health crisis going forward, because children are not going to grow properly. And mothers are already getting very sick. As you mentioned, the NCDs are skyrocketing. But also for teachers, imagine trying to teach a hungry child. So our education outcomes also are not going to be good, because kids can't take in. Doesn't matter if you have the best teacher in the world, but if a child is sitting in school and is hungry, the outcome is going to be a child that does very poorly in college, if she can get there, and certainly in the workplace. So food should be one of the core political priorities, because if you get that right, then a lot of the different developmental outcomes just come together. But for some reason, South Africa and the ruling party are not prioritizing food on our plates. And because of that, it's not only creating a crisis right now, we have an emergency food crisis right now, but the future is being undermined every day.
Yeah. So heartbreaking, the situation you've outlined where we are right now. Thank you, Dr. Julie Smith, researcher at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. All right, hopefully some